Okay, countdown.
Fuck you, guys. 3, 2, 1, go.
All right. Hello to our dropouts out there. Thank you for listening to our third podcast.
Yeah, number 3.
Very exciting.
Number 3.
And really the reason why it's exciting is because, as we alluded to a couple of podcasts ago, we're looking at some stats. And if we do 4 podcasts, we would be in, I think, the 30% of people that continue on from doing their third podcast. So 75% of podcasts don't actually go on to the fourth one. So yeah.
Pretty Where's the round of applause
cool.
button? Where's that one? Where's that one? Which one is it? G?
Yeah.
Fuck. Yay! We're on.
Oh, that's teamwork.
On the way.
That's
So,
good.
but-
And then what's the next milestone after that you were saying before?
So supposedly, if you do 21 podcasts, you're in the top 1% of all podcasts,
God damn.
Wow.
which is pretty cool.
Big leap from 3 to 21.
And yeah, I think we
That's
should,
what-
if we do one a week, we should be able to do 35 this year. So yeah,
We're on track.
Yeah,
we're on track. Haven't missed
We're
a
on
beat
track.
yet.
And if we keep having listeners, then we'll be able to keep going. So
Yeah,
tell
thanks
your
for
friends.
Thanks for listening in. How many
listening in.
listeners did we get last week?
So we're 98. I think we might be 100 now for number 2.
Nice.
So yeah, if we can continue on that trajectory, yeah, we'll be knocking on the door of getting those royalties.
Love that.
Yeah, we've already had a few sponsorship offers. Unfortunately, I had to let them know that we had nothing to offer them in return,
Shout
apart
out.
from 100 listeners of people that they probably already know.
Yeah, that are already buying their products.
Exactly right.
Well, what we're going to be talking about today, you would have seen in our social media, Instagram, we're talking about community, culture, and connection. And we're going to be talking about how we sort of came together to the actual dropouts, and then, just other things in and around that. But yeah, before then, we can, just have a bit of a chit chat.
Who was the original 180 member who started at that gym earliest out of all 3 of us?
I think it was JB.
I think I did, but I was
Yeah.
just like floating between the 9:30, the 4 p.m.
Yeah.
Basically, whatever I just felt like doing on. Someone referred to me as the gym mascot at one point because I was just rocking up to every class.
Didn't you go to like the Christmas party before you joined?
No.
The one before?
No. I'm not
Oh.
that ballsy. Imagine that. I'm like, listen, my intention is to join. Can I come to a Christmas party next week?
+1.
Plus 1, please.
Yeah, so when did you...
I joined 3 months after the warehouse gym started. So obviously John and them had the school hall gym, I think in Greystanes.
Yeah.
And then when they opened the warehouse, my cousin Rodney went to school with John, and I saw it on Instagram, the gym, and I'm like, Rodney, like, let's go around to that gym. I don't want to go on my own. I'm like, it looks like a sick gym. Let's go. And then I signed up. So that's how I started there.
Yeah, and what
about you guys?
I think you were before me too.
No, I don't think so. I joined July last year.
Oh, same. No, I joined, July, August.
Maybe we joined at the same time. Yeah, July last year. Didn't start with the 5 a.m. crew until January of this year. Just sold the shop at the end of last year and thought I'd be going back from early morning wake ups to later mornings. But Jesse and a few other guys were like, "Yo, we're doing 5 a.m. before Christmas." Done it up to January 1st, and I was like, man, I'm not going back to training in the afternoons. It's too good. There's too much of a connection in the morning, and everyone's just getting after it. And now, after training 4 or 5 months at 5 a.m., like if I miss a session, I'm spewing. I want to get there. I feel like I've got FOMO, fear of missing out, because everyone's there, done, high-fiving, coffee in the morning. They've already hit that. They've already got that endorphin rush, already got the dopamine flowing.
100%.
And I can't miss out on that. So no, love training there. Love training at all gyms, but definitely have a special place in my heart for 180 for sure.
Yeah, and I think I was about the same time as you, but I did 3 5 a.m. mornings. So I remember the first time I went there. And again, this alludes to community and what was sort of how we got to this place here. But
For sure.
yeah, I started at 5 a.m. I met Jesse, Dylan, and the boys, and the girls as well, and they were very welcoming. And I ended up signing up the next day because I knew Jules, obviously. I actually signed up that morning. I knew Jules, I knew Leah, so I was quite comfortable already going into that environment. I'd been in the fitness industry for a while as well. So I think that was going in there and meeting everybody and them already having that vibe. I think that made it a lot easier to make that decision. Because before that, I'd never trained in that type of gym, like a group environment.
Right.
I'd always just been at a 24/7 gym, solo.
Isolating muscle groups.
Well, bicep curls, tricep extensions. So this was a new sort of environment for me, other than me actually working as a PT and sort of bridging that for other people. But yeah, like I trained at 3 times in the morning at 5 a.m, twice in the afternoon. So I got to meet the afternoon crew as well.
4 p.m. crew as well. You were training with, right?
Yeah, they're a big group. They're big group. Great group of people. So once I finished doing my morning, Thursday morning training sessions at a different gym, I joined the 5 a.m. full time. So
Jules gave me an interesting vantage point on the story you just told about how when you joined. We were training on last Saturday or the Saturday before, and I came in later. Remember, because I had something on in the morning. I forgot what it was.
Oh, you trained with Jules, yeah.
Yeah, I trained with Jules, and we were talking about you, and he was saying how when Shawnee joined, Shawnee was like, I'm going to come, I want to come around to the gym, and Jules is just like, this guy's like, he must just sit kind of just visits the people that he's taught, in Fit College. I was like, yeah, mate, all right. So Shawnee came around for a session. And then he apparently told Jules, like, oh, yeah, bro, it's sick. Like, I want to sign up. And Jules just, like, waved it off. He's just being nice, whatever. Like, didn't think anything of it. And Jules goes, and, bro, later that day, I was getting a missed call from Sean. I was like, what the fuck? What's this guy calling me? Picks up the phone, and then Sean is like, hey, bro, like, I'm on. Like, I want to sign up.
Yeah, got my card.
Yeah. And I think that's just, that's just funny because, like, I feel like there's so many stories of that, of you in relation to that type of thing where you're just, like, you just did the thing. You know what I mean? A lot of other people, I might have been like, hey, let's give it a go for 5 days. Let's give it a go for 7 days or what have you. So anyway.
Yeah, and I remember that was also because I had been doing that individual work, and I was like, man, I want something different. Like, it's all well and good. Like, I knew the people in the gym where I was training at. I'd always talk to them, etc. But I was like, man, I want something different. I want a different type of training as well, because it's like, conditioning and strength together. So that was sort of pushing me across the line as well. But then I think it was also, like I said, going in at 5 a.m. and meeting the crew then, because I already felt like, this feels like a really good community already, even though I just went there for that one time. So they made the decision pretty easy. And I guess that's where we started at 180 and met each other. And then moved on from there. But with regards to the 5 a.m. crew, obviously we have a big group there that we train with. But yeah, we made some really good connections there where we not only go there at 5 a.m. and we train, but we also go next door to Elevate and we have coffee and chats and we sort of catch up. So that sort of ingrained this whole community with that group in itself, which was really good. And
that's an interesting point, right? Because you can often see how, like, the presence of certain businesses, whether it be a cafe, and obviously, Matty, you had a cafe too, so I'd be interested to hear your perspective on this, is like, the fact that cafe exists there very much bolsters that community and that culture piece that we have, right? Because it just means that we all have a place to go and hang out. Yeah. And I think, hospitality in general and those types of places, cafes in general, very much foster that type of an environment. So, I mean, I think that Elevate even being there just definitely doubles down on what we feel like we already have in the gym, gives us an opportunity to connect outside of the gym itself. Yeah. Did you find that was the same, Matty, when you were kind of running the cafe, and did that create that sort of a vibe?
Yeah, definitely. Very similar nature in terms of having a gym right next to the cafe. I think the two go hand in hand, and I think whenever you have a cafe or little espresso bar with health orientated food next to a gym, it's obviously going to foster that community and connection, so people can, I guess, unwind after the session after they've gotten it in together, and then chat about things that relate to things externally apart from just getting a good workout. And I think that's where probably our friendship and camaraderie has really stemmed from, which is obviously the training is the first thing, ticking that off the list in the morning. But then, speaking about other things outside of the gym definitely has helped. And I experienced that a lot at the cafe. And I think having that community and connection and culture, if you guys are, putting your best foot forward in the morning and doing something difficult in the morning, which is rolling out of bed in the middle of winter and, kicking your ass on the assault bike or, doing some heavy weightlifting, then it just, you are all there for the same reason, which is at the end of the day, personal development and getting a little bit better, and that extends to, beyond just the coffee shop and beyond the gym. But I think a lot of the people that we train with in the morning are trying to be the best version of themselves in all aspects of their life. And it's very encouraging to see. And it's, it's motivating when you see other people doing it because it holds you accountable. And I think accountability is one of the biggest themes that goes with culture and connection, especially our culture and connection, which is, you know, personal development. And, you know, when you've got others to lean on and people messaging in the group chat and we've got a roll call, making sure that we get to training every morning, it just makes it all the more encouraging and, you know, all the more fulfilling when the end of the week comes and, you know, you've ticked a bunch of boxes.
Yeah, and that's what Matt is alluding to, is within that community that we have, that 5 a.m. 180, and shout out to 180 for obviously fostering that and allowing us to express ourselves within those classes, within the group that we have. But within that 5 a.m. Group, we have another group, which is the 5 a.m. Hustlers, which is pretty much a Instagram chat group where, as Matty said, we have a roll call, we sort of G each other up. I would say it's more banter than anything.
Totally.
Which can be fun.
With an element of seriousness.
And a bit of jabs here and there.
I think this is an this is where it gets interesting, right? Because and this is why I used to think that the word cult came from culture, by the way. It doesn't, it turns out, but I thought that was a nice connection. So I should have just left that out instead it did. But this is where it gets interesting, right? Because I feel like a lot of the time it can, you know, what's community and culture to one person can often feel like what's like a guarded fortress to others on the outside.
Yeah.
Right. Like
as outsiders.
To outsiders. I mean, for us being
like
in there, it's amazing. It's great or what have you. But I think, you know, from the outside looking in, there can be a level of like maybe cynicism around like, oh, wow, that'd be awesome to be part of, but like those guys are like, you know, I don't know, a clique or
totally,
you know what I mean? So it's like there's like always like a
you got to be careful.
Yeah.
And I think that's just human nature. You know, when you're looking at a group externally, you think, what are they about? Like, who are they? What are they doing? Are they like, that's
like
natural.
before 5 a.m.
That is cool.
Before I went to 5 a.m., I'd come at like 6 or 7, and these guys would walk out of the gym. I'm like, who the fuck do these guys think they are?
Waking up at 4:30.
Get out. Get
I'm
out
here
to train.
6 a.m.
All
my
right,
turn.
put your shirt back on for one. Put your fucking shirt back on. Get out of the gym and stop making noise. And then like, here I am. But like at the time, there was like a level of like, it was like a kind of burning, but kind of like, oh, that's cool. Like I like that energy, but also like, I'd like to be invited in. I don't want to just like insert myself because I feel weird.
Well,
maybe they won't accept me.
I think it's the mystery of it all. I think it's like, you know, looking in as if like, I think it's the unknown. It's almost interesting. It's almost like captures your attention. Just quickly, we'll go a little bit off the gym here, but it relates to you know, seeing a group and you almost kind of want to be a part of it.
Like so in a social
way. I was when I was traveling in the Philippines, I was in Siargao, which is an island, a surfing island in the Philippines, really popular now. Boracay was one of the more popular islands when you're sort of backpacking and traveling through the Philippines, but Siargao was one of them when I went in 2019. And I remember staying in a hostel called the Avocado Hostel. God knows why it was called that name, but it was super quiet. There wasn't many people there. So I went out and looking for, you know, another place to stay because as I was traveling solo, I wanted to meet friends and I didn't want to be by myself. And I came across a hostel called the Smiling Pig Hostel. It's called the Smiling Pig Hostel, and strangest experience ever. So in order to stay at this hostel, all the hostels you book through Hostel World. So you look on, as I get to the next place, I would check out the reviews, 5 stars, 4 stars, or bed.
That's an amazing website, by the way.
Amazing website. And jumped in at this hostel. There was no listing for it, but a girl that I met at the airport, an English girl, told me that she was staying there. I went there.
And you were keen as.
Yes,
was she hot?
I'm coming.
She wasn't a bad sort. But it wasn't the main reason that drew me there. Like I said, there was no one at the other place. Went there and there was almost like an initiation process to be able to stay at this place. You kind of had to go in, answer a bunch of questions. It was very personal. But from the outside, before I had, you know, stayed at this place, there was so much intrigue about this place because all the members would hang out with each other all day. It was almost like a weird sort of cult. But I ended up staying there. The fit out was terrible. There was fucking bed bugs in the other bed. It was gross, but it was such an experience because everyone that was sort of traveling around this place knew on the island, the Smiling Pig, it's like a if you know, you know type of thing. It was like one of those sort of cool places. But sometimes, you know, it doesn't work in your favor. Those places end up being, you know, not all that it's cracked out to be. But I know with 180, I sort of maybe had that, I guess, perspective or pre-assumed knowledge of what it would be. And then I came there and, you know, silenced all of those thoughts straight away. And I think that's probably to do with our personalities, is like jumping in, you know, head first and worrying about, you know, the effects later. Just go in, try it, and if you don't like it, then you can always take a step back and don't have to follow through with it. But take that risk and be bold.
Because when I first started 5am, I didn't know about the group, like because I didn't start the group. Like the group had already been determined, this 5am group, whatever, and I just went and trained and whatever. And I think this is something as well. Like if you want to be a part of a community, you have to show up, right? You can't just sit at the back and be like, oh, I want to be a part of that, and just sort of hide in the background. Like you have to go and you have to at some point in time insert yourself. Not to say that, hey, I want to be in the community, put me in the community. It's more of I want to be involved. I want to talk to these people. I want to show that I can be somebody that can be in this community. But then I got invited into it, and it was cool, like, to be a part of it. And that comes back down to belonging, right? Everybody wants to belong at some point in time. And especially if you're seeing it from afar, and like you guys said, like, you're like, oh man, that's pretty cool. Like, so that's sort of how we connected in 180. Then it was this 5M Hustlers. We sort of connected there, and then we trained together as well, obviously. And then I remember we were talking to JP about doing. I think we're talking to you about doing a podcast. We're like, man, JP, like, man, you got the gift of the gab. You can talk. You should do a podcast. And then you started talking about real estate as well. Like, man, why don't you do a real estate podcast? And we'll just, this was at the cafe. And then Matty was talking about his media stuff and, what he's doing there with his business. And I was talking about sometimes I'll talk about my mindset coaching stuff. And I remember we were sitting at the Elevate and everybody had left. And we were sitting at the table. And we were just talking about, you were talking about some things that you might have wanted to do. You were saying that, Matty, I was saying it. And then we sort of said, oh, hey, boys, why don't we just get together once a month, one Friday a month, and we just talk about business. We set some goals, we'll work on some stuff. And that's what sort of got us, I don't want to say away from the 180 crew, but I mean, in terms of us moving into this sort of trio of this little community. So what happened was a couple of Fridays later, we met up at Misk Cafe there, and we just started our first little mastermind group or little chat group, which is pretty cool. Because for me, I've always wanted to be a part of those types of groups where you just talk about business. It's all ambition, it's all like hustle and grind, and holding each other accountable. So I was pretty keen to be able to get into that. Then we did the second Friday, which is a month later, and then that's when we
met up at AJ's, and we had the chat, and then Sean is like, podcast, and I think just as I was saying before, just in passing, I was like, oh yeah, I'll do a podcast, whatever, just not really thinking anything would happen, and then Shawnee went and bought the kit, and off we went,
and that's sort of again, look how we came to this little community or this little connection. I mean, we were connected at the gym already, so that was good, but then obviously coming back down to this little trio here is how we sort of came to the podcast.
And I mean, just taking you back to, I want to just go back to one of the points you mentioned around what was it, belonging? Were you talking about belonging before?
Belonging,
and we're obviously talking, and Matty shared a story about the exclusivity of this particular hostel, what have you, and I think that you made a point about like people being on the outside looking in on a particular group, whether it be a little business group or and often I feel like the fear that people have around the rejection is stronger than the desire to belong. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like people look in and go, okay, I would want to be a part of that and I'd like to insert myself in that, but I'm worried that I won't be, accepted into that group. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's a big thing for people. Like, I mean, even for example, when I was in year 7 and 8, and some of the guys from school, I think, have been listening to this, so they'll find this funny, or not funny, maybe a bit sad.
Get the tissue.
Yeah, no, give me the tissue box. No, in year 7 and 8, like, you want to be part of the cool kids, and I was trying to, be part of the, cool group. And there was one particular group, for example, and in this example, I did assert myself, or try to insert myself. And I wanted to be friends with these guys, and these guys are all like skateboarding. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'm getting into my skateboarding. So my sisters will find this funny too. I used to just like skate on the driveway and what have you. So I wanted to get into that. So that was kind of, so I went and bought a skateboard. I wore, the brands even, like Almost was a big brand. It had like Globe and Etnies, and you know what I mean? All the skate brands. Yeah. And, I felt like I definitely tried to fit in with that crew, but I don't feel like they ever really, ended up accepting me. And that, I feel like that happens a lot. People have those experiences. That's why a lot of the time they'll almost develop that persona of like, I'm riding solo.
That's
Yeah.
right.
You know what I mean? And they develop that persona and they kind of have that outer as a result of some of those experiences. So, and I feel like that's what kind of led me to, lingering on the outskirts of that group and feeling like I was more probably being victimized, or I don't want to go as far as like the word bullied, but you know what I mean? That's just how I felt at the time. And like, that's the thing. These guys didn't mean it. Right. And I think that for all intents and purposes, they were just trying to potentially protect the culture that they had.
Yeah.
Right. That's the thing. It's not like whenever you kind of see someone on the outskirts, and we've all seen that before, where there's always that one person that maybe we don't feel like, maybe everyone else warms up to us, but there's always that one or two people who you feel like that particular person hasn't really warmed up to me. And maybe that particular person doesn't mean,
Doesn't mean harm
badly.
by
They're
that.
just trying to protect the culture and the community they have. And that's, in a way, I guess what companies do too, right? They'll go and they interview people and they'll talk about culture's really important to us.
Yeah.
And it's a different context because like it's a job interview, so you don't feel like you're being bullied if you don't get the job. But at the end of the day, they have a gatekeeper there in relation to culture and community.
And what they're trying to harness.
Exactly right. And if they don't feel like this particular person meets that, they will effectively keep that person out of the culture. So
how do you think somebody who is sort of on the outside can push themselves into that type of community that they want to be a part of? Like what do you think?
But not only that, do you think
know what I
it's
mean?
worth their time then to, I guess it all goes with the intent of not the people just accepting them on the inside of that community, but is it then worth your time? And are you trying to seek validation for the sake of just becoming part of a community?
Why
Why do you want to be a part of that community? I think for the gym and our part, it's we're committed to training. We want to get up. We want to achieve our best. But for your sake, when you're younger, you might be insecure about hanging out with these friends and wearing certain clothes or doing certain activities like skateboarding or whatever it is, just to be part of a crew. Is it worth then your time?
Well, I mean, I think it's just like the basic human needs, right? Like, I don't know where it is on Maslow's like hierarchy, but it exists there. Like the need, love, connection, belonging. Like it's just something that we feel. And I think, it's the best way to describe it is probably just that feeling of like love. Do these people, do I walk around? Do I feel like I'm part of something? It's also, when you feel, I think if we take it to the other side, if we feel alone or if we feel like we're not part of something, we tend to get a lot more existential, like, who am I? What am I doing? What am I doing with my life? Like, I feel like that, when we get to a point where things aren't going right for us or we're not part of a particular, community or a particular group, that's when we can start to get those like negative thoughts around like, and that's what I feel like is the big thing that people often miss, is that people try and blame it on other things like work or what have you. But often if they have that love, culture, community, connection in their life, that's when they just feel like everything's okay. Things are right. Even if, maybe they're making the money that they want to make, or driving the car they want to drive, or live in the house they want to live in. If they have that culture, community, and connection, that is fulfilling. And this manifests itself in so many different ways. We can talk about the gym. We can talk about things like church and religious groups and stuff like that too.
I think it goes back to somewhere to call home, really, at the end of the day. And it's like, where do you call home apart from your actual physical address? And I think it's you can have that orphan spirit where it's like, do I belong here? Are these people, do they have my best interest at mind? What's the reason that we're hanging out together at its core? Do I share the same beliefs and morals and values that these people share? And I think at the end of the day, if you ask yourself those questions and then say, do I fit into this group, rather than leading with, maybe I can fit into this group, and then worrying about your morals and all those things later, I think that should be at the top. Yeah. And then worry about everything else after that. And then
going back to your point around like how can people kind of get into that? I think that like it's important we talk about the role of particular individuals that are within those groups, right? Because there's always going to be those people that are going to be, for example, Sean, you're a prime example of someone comes, Oliver will tell me that when, although RIP Oliver, he hasn't come back to the gym for a while.
Come back, brother.
He talked about how, first thing, you came into the gym, he came into the gym. I wasn't there yet. No one was there that he knew. He kind of walked in like there wasn't anyone really to greet him. I think it was he came a little bit early, but you were in there, you saw him. First thing you do, straight up to him, hey bro, how are you? I'm Sean. So I think that the role of individuals is really important for helping bring people into that community and culture and to help them feel like they belong in that connection. And I think that once that person is able to attach themselves to someone who they feel like cares or gives a shit.
Yeah.
That then is that kind of catalyst for them being able to join, you know, potentially feel like they could be part of the wider group, because at the end of the day, you are the bridge between that person and the other individuals who you have a relationship with, to bring them into the culture of the community. So.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, like what Maddie was saying about, you know, trying to find groups that align with what you believe and your values. And I think when we're growing up, we're sort of trying to find our values. We're trying to like figure out who we are. So we just try to attach ourselves to whatever group. And sometimes it might be like, oh, that group looks cool or that group looks fun. But they might not necessarily align with who you are at that point in time. So yeah, definitely it's easy within the gym because again, we're all there because we want to train, we want to be better. But sometimes it can be a little bit difficult. Like for me, similar to what you just talked about, JP, when I went to boarding school, I went a term later. So
you started late.
Yeah, so in year 7, I didn't get accepted into the school. So I went and started hanging out I went to a school called De La Salle. I was there for the first term and, you know, we came from primary school. So coming from primary school, going to this intermediate, you would have different people from all different primary schools. And then, you know, were your mates going to go to the same school as you? So you're going to leave your mates, you're going to go and you're going to see all these new people. So then you're going to start to make these connections, right? And then again, you have these groups like, who's that group? Who's this group? What group am I going to be a part of? So I was there for a month and at the end, there for a term. So at the end of that term, I was starting to really make connections and make friends. And then I got the call that I'd been accepted to the school, which was my first school that my dad had tried to put me in. And then I was like, okay, and he goes, well, this is a really good school. It's really going to help us as a family, etc. Because at that point in time, he was a single father. So I had to make the decision to leave. So when I went to this new school, boarding school, I remember I was brought into the office, the main office, and the principal was there and I was trained to them. And then they had an assembly on and they took me to the assembly and there was all these boys there watching the assembly. There was, I think it was like 300 boys. There was one row of chairs at the back and they said, oh, go sit on those chairs at the back. Had like long hair, like scruffy. I was in my, in my mufti, we used to call it. And I was like, oh shit. Like, I guess I was a little bit afraid. I was like, a bit scared. Like all these boys have had this whole term to connect and make friends and etc. So I walked there, I sat down and all the boys like turned back and I looked at me.
Who's this guy?
Who the fuck
and
is this?
And I was like, who's this scruffy dude? And I was just like, man, I felt like, oh, this is weird. And then my dad left.
Oh, that would have sucked.
So I turned off. My dad like had to leave because I was obviously staying because we were boarding school. So now I had to like try and make these new connections where all these other boys had already made these connections.
Yeah.
And I remember in the boarding house that I was in, you know, going into a boarding house as well. Obviously, it's less boys than obviously the whole school. And we had pool tables and table tennis tables. And I remember one time I was standing at the pool table. And you know how I am now. I go say hello to everybody. But at that particular time, I was just like, what am I doing here? I now don't get to see my sister, my dad on a regular basis. I won't see my friends that I've made connections with, also my friends from primary school. And then I sat at the pool table and one of the boys, I was looking at him because he was talking and he goes to me, what the fuck are you looking at? And I was like, oh, nothing. And he started arcing up at me.
Damn.
Like arcing up at me and I was like, nothing. And I walked outside and I started tearing up because that was the first week that I was there. First week that I'd slept there the night.
Fuck, man.
First week.
That's heavy.
That's heavy.
And I was tearing up and he came outside and I was like, oh, bro, like, sorry, like, I was just joking. Like, I didn't mean it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. He came out and apologized.
Yeah.
Like that turn.
Yeah.
Bro,
because when I was at primary school, I was a bit of a rough and tumble kid. Like, we used to fight quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I think the emotion of being there, like, by myself, like,
it got
going into that. So, and then he apologized and we ended up being great mates. Like from then on, and I think from him apologizing and sort of taking me under my wing, he sort of brought me into like the rest of the boys and stuff like that. And even talking about that connection, that first night that I was at boarding school, because I felt like isolated because the boys were playing table tennis together. They were like, and I was just sort of just like, oh, what's going on? Again, in my back of my mind, I'm at boarding school now. Like I'm separated from my sister, who I was very close with, my parents, etc. I went up to my dorm, went into my room and sort of laid in bed. And this was before it was lights out, so no one was in bed. I started crying and I was like, fuck, what's going on?
What am I doing here?
What is this? But obviously that was that one point, that was the second point that happened, and then from then on everything was fine, obviously. But again, it was that whole, like on a big scale for me at that time, at that age, it was year 7. It was pretty.
I think it's the fear of the unknown. And the interesting point you're talking about school, man. I remember, like, what about school? I'm sure you would agree. You're in the schoolyard. It's funny how like kids just tend to cluster in groups, and it's always and for whatever reason, generally it's in ethnicity groups. You got the Asian group, you got the Lebos hanging out together, you got the Filipinos hanging out together,
the freshies,
you know, all the freshies, all the groups clustering together, and for
which is fair, like
which is fair, 100%. But I guess that goes back to culture and like who you reside with and your crew. And I think as you get a little bit older and you, I guess, come into contact with groups that maybe you weren't exposed to before, then you have that ability to, I guess, you know, break down, you know, generational barriers or cultural barriers and extend to other groups. But in school...
But there were also like, there was always those, you know, kids who were, they like not were loners, but they had that, there were always those ones where you looked at and you go, oh, gee, like at the time you think, oh, I wouldn't want to be them. Now you think that was fucking pretty gronky, what everyone would do to them. But like, you know, and then you think about those people who, you know, in society who are disenchanted by the fact that they don't belong to a particular group. And then you even have people who go and like exploit those types of vulnerabilities. Like, I mean, even take, for example, cult, like actual cults, like for example, Charles Manson's cult. You know, he would literally prey on the weak and try to get them. And obviously Charles Manson and the Manson family were a cult and a community that I think they, you know, it was like 9 murders that were committed, you know, across a period of time. And obviously that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood movie is based on that, but it's got a twist on it. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting how, like, you know, you'll find that this culture, you know, the culture and community is great, but then it can often make people feel like maybe they don't belong in the world, you know, maybe they don't belong anywhere in the world. And then that's what can lead to things like, you know, the Manson family. So, I mean, and that's, I think, what the dangers can be of like unchecked kind of groupthink and obviously you know those individuals who maybe are feeling, you know, somewhat disenchanted. Isolated. So,
but I think it's also like within that community, like you talked about, Oliver. Like I think some people within that community have a responsibility to reach out to those people. Like again, like when I go into 180, I say hello to everybody. Like you probably see me high-fiving everybody. Even on a Saturday when we get to see everybody else, like I just go around to everybody and say hello, high five, whatever. And that's just because I've been in the industry before and I know what it's like for people to potentially feel isolated. You know, coming into a gym where, you know, they're scared, you know, their whole mindset is, oh, there's just going to be these fit people and, you know, I'm not going to be able to belong, etc. So I think that, you know, you as somebody within the community does have a responsibility when you have people floating around to go and, you know, introduce yourself at least to make sure they feel welcome. And it's not always going to happen like that, especially at school. That's obviously where it starts. But I remember, Matty, you talked about Oak Hill. You went to Oak Hill, and it's a different experience for you as well. In terms of, you talked about ethnicity and...
Yeah, no, totally. Oak Hill was definitely a melting pot of cultures. And I think that, I guess, being there, I think growing up in the hills especially, and I know probably people in Sydney might be like, oh, well, what's the difference in terms of, you know, the hills versus the Parramatta and Granville area? But I think they've all, though they're geographically only, you know, 10, 15, 20, 30 kilometres apart, I think there's a big difference in terms of groupthink and that we can all share, you know, certain perceived values. And because I've spent a lot of time of my life between, I guess, both suburbs or
both worlds in a way.
Both worlds in a way, I'm able to then observe, I guess, externally and, you know, absorb what I want from a lot of those cultures, but also refrain from absorbing from a lot of those cultures. And I think, you know, I am my own person at the end of the day, and I think everyone should be, you know, have their own sense of identity. Naturally, we're going to get our identity from our culture, but I think to, I guess, you know, relinquish yourself to a whole collective of identities or principles or thoughts from a one particular group, then I think that can be a catalyst for your downfall, is if you just absorb it, and then it eradicates the need to think critically and to form your own opinion if you're just around a culture of thinking. But no, Oak Hill, man, there was a great sense of community there. As you said, you went to a De La Salle school. We were a De La Salle school as well at Oak Hill. But yeah, definitely a melting pot of cultures. And I think, yeah, man, in terms of Arabs and Lebos at that school, there wasn't many of them. So I did feel like an outsider in a sense as well. But But yeah, man, a great school. But I think there was definitely a sense of, for me, I felt a little bit on the outside, especially when I first got to that school. Interesting one.
Yeah. What about you, JP? What school did you go to?
I went to Trinity Grammar in Ashfield, Summerhill. So, I mean, interesting because I grew up my whole life around here, but I went to, private boys' school in the inner west, and I always felt like, for me, I was definitely between kind of both worlds, where I had, I don't know, I was from the area around here, and I didn't necessarily feel like I was one of the people from here, because like everyone else knew everyone from around here. I didn't really know many people. Like I hung around a lot with so much with my cousins and my family. And then obviously I had my schoolmates and stuff like that. But, when I would go spend time with them, it might be in the inner west or what have you. And, but yeah, so that was definitely an interesting experience for me. And, I probably more feel like a part of this area now because I know all of you guys, as well as the fact that, I've got my cousins and family that live here, but I feel more connected to, the local area now just because you guys are here. Whereas, a lot of my mates and stuff like that, all lived elsewhere. And obviously we're part of that, that culture and that community of, the inner west, for example. But yeah, for me, a big part of that, outside of school in particular was definitely family. I spent, me and my cousins had our own little kind of fortress, if you will. Like it was just us. And that's an interesting one, right? Because that is very much like we are all like not only is our blood the same, but we think and we talk exactly the same way. When someone says something, we know exactly what they mean.
Yeah, totally.
And it's just a different level of kind of connection and community because it's funny because sometimes I'll often go and do something or say something that is very much maybe a joke between us in another group chat that has got nothing to do with my cousins, and I'll be pissing myself laughing
and they won't get it,
and they won't get it, and they'll just think like, what's wrong with this
but
guy?
you show that to your cousin and just starts dying laughing.
I'm like, mate, look what I put in that group, and they're just like, isn't this funny? They're like, yeah, it's hilarious, but no one else gets it. So so I think that family's obviously the OG kind of community and
the starting
culture.
point.
Very much so. And but it's interesting how you'll see people that will often talk about and say, they'll talk about friends like their family and which is obviously great. But I mean, growing up, I always felt like I wanted to be a part of more of, outside of the family. But then, once I'd kind of gotten older, I realized that, well, those from the outside looking in actually wanted what I had.
Yeah.
But that's not what I wanted when I was growing up.
Well, a lot of people don't have that. Like they have small families.
Yeah.
And
they don't even talk to their first cousins. And, they don't,
Well, Shawnee, you're obviously from New Zealand. Definitely a huge connection to your culture as we are as Egyptians as well. Both our parents are Egyptian, or mum, I'm Syrian. But talk us through, I guess, the Kiwi mindset, is your dad's obviously Māori?
And what was it like coming over here too?
I'm Fijian Scottish. So I was born in New Zealand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was born in New Zealand, but my parents were born in Fiji. So my father moved over to New Zealand when he was 2. My grandparents moved out. I think my mum moved over to New Zealand when she was 21, I think. So my sister was first generation Kiwi born in New Zealand, and I was as well. But we soaked up the Māori culture, obviously being in New Zealand. Which is massive around family, and we were that way as well. We have a massive family that stretches obviously not only in Fiji but across Australia and across the world. And I went to a family reunion when I was 19 back in Fiji, and this particular event I didn't really think too much about it. I was like, okay, cool, we're going to see some new cousins, etc. But the enormity of how many people were actually there at this family reunion, I really felt this really massive connection to Fiji, because obviously I grew up in New Zealand, but massive connection to Fiji, but also my family was on my father's side. So because we had a family reunion in Fiji when I was 5, and obviously I can't remember too much of what happened there, but other than seeing photos. But when we went to the second one, obviously I was 19. It was my great grandmother's family. So my great grandmother's brothers and sisters, it was all of their family.
Wow.
And then our family. So for example, for my great grandmother's family, for us, we would wear blue bolo shirts, and then her sister's family would wear white, and then the other family would wear yellow. And so there were like 20 to 25 to 30 in each family.
Wow.
That went to this reunion. And again, I went with, I was like, oh, cool, it's going to be fun. But then again, going through all the activities that we did, we played sports, we had like a talent quest night. And yeah, I felt this massive connection with Fiji because again, they call us Kailoma in Fiji. That means you're half caste. So you're sort of like an outsider almost.
Mud blood.
Yeah, mud blood. Yeah,
That's
I guess like that.
Yeah, in a way, that's what.
So you're sort of like that. So when I grew up in New Zealand, I say I'm Scottish because that's my last name, Buchanan. But I was almost like, yeah, I'm Fijian, but I don't speak Fijian because my grandparents didn't think that we lived in New Zealand, so there's no point in doing so. I can't speak Fijian. I go back to Fiji every couple of years. I got a lot of family over there. But it's almost like you don't really feel like you're like, oh, where am I with regards to this community? So when I went to that particular event, it was a big sense of culture and community and, okay, well, this is where I belong and this is who I am. So, and my dad was always massive on making sure he took us back to Fiji and saw family.
Connecting to your roots.
And at school, when I went to De La Salle, it was a lot of islanders. Like it was 99% islanders, right? So that was a very comfortable place to be in. But then when I went to this boarding school, there was only a handful of us, a small percentage of us that were islanders. So, we created our own little sort of group. We wouldn't exclude anybody, but yeah, it was...
it's almost culture shock in a way. Have you ever experienced that when traveling? You ever experienced culture shock where you sort of... Because we got such a firm understanding, and even though we're, our heritage is Egyptian or Syrian or Fiji or New Zealand or whatever you reside with or whatever your parents' heritage are, but I'm absolutely 100% proudly an Australian. Definitely, you know what I mean? And I love this country. I'm so grateful that we get to, grow up in such a beautiful country, free from a lot of things that, a lot of third world countries maybe aren't, and just the basic things that we take for granted on a day to day. But I think like the Aussie culture, just our larrikin, our Aussie spirit, really shines through on days like Anzac Day and things like that, when you're at the pub. And I guess it's a double-edged sword. We have things that we're proud of, but there's definitely things that, I look at, I guess with an objective point of view, go out. There's definitely a very, a piss culture, getting out, getting on the drink.
On the bags, whatever,
Whatever it is, yeah.
No, I'm just saying.
Definitely getting on the bags, getting on the drugs. There's definitely, I guess, a bit of a widespread sort of acceptance. I don't know if I want to say acceptance, but maybe the younger generation has sort of, fostered that sort of energy and that acceptance of those things. And I think it's got, it's definitely got its downfalls as well. But
no, I totally agree.
But that's wanting to become a part of community as well. Like,
exactly right. No, sorry, go on, Sean. I've got an interesting point on this topic, so let's stay on it.
No, I'm just talking about with regards to the drinking culture, and you see your friends doing it, and then you feel like you need to do it because that's what the community is doing.
That's acceptance in a way,
acceptance and belonging. So that's
well, and it's exactly what I was before you go on, JP. It was exactly what I was touching on before, which is like it's all good and well and natural that we want to feel connected to a culture because that's where we feel where we're in a sense of belonging and, who we reside with and the values that we share. But then to blindly accept to all of those cultural norms and to all of those cultural values, even though they may go against, your beliefs, your own beliefs, then that's where we start to go down a bit of a fork in the road where it's like, I'm going to commit wholeheartedly to that culture or I'm just going to, do what's right. Do what's right and do what's right for you.
Yeah, that's it. And I think on that point, right, like, especially being someone that's inside that, like for example, when I started working at LinkedIn, I was 23 years old, right? And of course, there was like we had free drinks on a Friday. Like it was like living on a university campus when it comes to like culture and community, right? Like I think I said to you guys before, we had breakfast, we had lunch every day. Every Thursday they'd have a restaurant come and cater lunch.
It's so good.
And like showcase their food. Yeah. We had a gym in the office. So it was like literally living in a commune almost. You know what I mean? Like everything's shared. You got food, you got, fun. Everyone goes out together, what have you. And, often it was just a case of, I would fully insert myself in that culture and I'd be out on the Fridays drinking. And I remember I'd had this one guy, who, he came up to me and he was a mate of ours and, he used to come out and go out with us lots, and I was like, "Oh, bro, you're gonna come out today? You want to come have a drink or two?" And he's like, "Nah, man, I'm just gonna go home." And it was a Friday night, and I remember thinking like, "What's wrong with this guy? Like, what's actually wrong with him? His life must be miserable." That's the extent at which I thought that, which is completely wrong. But that goes like, it comes back down to the topic of like once, because he was a part of it, right? He still like was a part of it at that time, but it was almost like when you get to a point where you feel like you've outgrown something, not because you're better than those people, but maybe just you feel like you're now at the point where you've outgrown it. You don't value those things anymore, and you feel like you're like, okay, do I just kind of suck it up and stay in here just for the sake of belonging, or do I, and how do I actually remove myself? And I think that's often a really tough thing to do, because the second you start to remove yourself, you start noticing things like, oh, I'm not getting invited to things as much anymore. Right. Yeah. I'm not hearing from these people as much. These people talk about, you can tell they talk about me like I've changed. Yeah. But really, I feel like I've grown. Like, I just value different things right now. And I feel like everyone goes through that, where you feel like, you're ingrained in a certain group or in a particular community or a particular culture, and you just feel like, some people maybe feel like they can't escape it because they want to feel like they belong. They don't want to have no friends anymore. Yeah. But they feel like if they try and exit, they might feel like they get iced out completely.
Yeah. I think it's one of those tough decisions and conversations you have to have with yourself. And, it can be a difficult thing to accept and to come to terms with. But like you said, it's only natural as you grow and you evolve and your values change over time. Your group's going to evolve naturally with you. So I think to go through that small period, post, of pain of coming out of a group to truly find who you are. And, a lot of people are on this journey, and it's this journey of life where you're constantly re-evolving the groups that you spend your time with, constantly re-evolving yourself.
And you often end up transitioning, right? Like, let's just say you exit, a group that maybe has some bad habits, and you find yourself, you find yourself attaching yourself to a group of people, maybe like the gym, maybe like a church or a youth group. Yeah. And all of a sudden you transition, and that kind of, you have that shift of belonging into somewhere else, which is what can really help with that transition. Because you go, oh, okay, I'm not alone. There are people that value the things that I now value and that have changed and gone on that journey just like me.
Yeah. And I think as well, it's like, are we hanging out with groups because of clothes that they're wearing or activities that they do? When I think, for example, the church group that I hang out with, a group that I'm really heavily involved with. When I first started, going to these Bible studies group or attending service on Sunday, or, going out and grabbing food or coffee with these people, if we're just being frank and we're being honest, some of these people I would look back and be like, why would I ever hang out with someone like this? This guy's not cool. He doesn't do these type of things. I would never have picked to be as close friends. I wouldn't be seen with these people. And this is just me being 100% frank.
Yeah, that's good.
But as time has gone on, I've come to the realization that, man, we share, truths and values and I guess,
it's not just
face
value.
The real stuff. It's the real stuff, man. The things that go beyond, what clothes I'm wearing or what shoes I'm wearing or, how they look, or how they look, or activities that we even like to do together. It goes to rocks me to my very core, and it's a humbling experience, but I think it's so necessary for growth. When you humble yourself of all of these things, all that shit that doesn't matter, all that surface level bullshit, and you're able to be real with those people, I think that's where real growth is formed. And man, I'm so thankful that I have a community to be a part of, and I urge people that maybe are listening, again, all 5 of you who are listening, to reevaluate maybe the groups that you hang out with. And, maybe you are with a great set of people, or, with your family or friends, but, never, downcast, your own happiness or your own peace for the sake of fitting in. I think that's, the overarching theme here.
And there is the fact of the matter is, there is another group of people just waiting for you. Yeah. Waiting for you, and they'll welcome you with open arms, whoever they may be. Like, it doesn't have to be, a gym, or it doesn't have to be a youth group, but at the end of the day, you're not, there's someone else out. This is what I tell myself when something's like bad. I always say, I'm not the only person that's ever experienced this. Yeah. This happened a million times before, totally. And this too shall pass.
And right? you gotta make sure that you find groups. And you can create your own group. I mean, but when you do leave one group or want to leave one group, make sure there's that other group that you can sort of slide yourself into, and where you can actually be yourself. Yeah. Where you can actively go into the community and not feel like you're hiding yourself, or you're trying to be another person.
Someone that you're not.
Yeah. So, and again, that comes back down to the community that you're trying to be a part of and how that dynamic is. But if you go into a community that, you are feeling like you're shutting yourself down, or you're sort of hiding in the background, even though you are a part of it, okay, was that the right community for you?
Maybe they're not your people.
Yeah, and that's okay. Like, if it's okay to jump from communities to find the right one for you.
And it's interesting. Sorry to cut you off.
No,
I'll go on. No,
No,
it's interesting when you get. I guess you stick out. When I was in Japan, I stuck out like fucking dog's balls.
Why? Because you're Arab.
Literally
why?
It was so funny, but like there's just a few stories in Japan. I think culture shock.
Do people take photos with you?
Man, it was so. Literally,
Because they probably did.
Big Lebanese man. Oh, you have beard. Oh. Seriously, I jumped on the train in the metro in Tokyo, and I stuck out like dog's balls, mate. I'm here, my fucking big puffer jacket on, my beanie, tattoos, and the beard, and what have you. And I definitely stuck out. But the Japanese people, I think. So I've never met a more kind group of people. And again, that's in their culture for whatever reason, I guess maybe their history or, I'm not sure of why they have that timidness and almost like so open, and the language barrier is definitely there. It was hard to communicate unless you're in the capital, unless you're in, hotels or, popular tourist spots of Tokyo. But I didn't know where to go on my train, and I went up to this train guy, and he had his suit on. And he was like, "Don't hurt me." No, he was so kind. He walked me because the language barrier, we couldn't understand each other. He walked me right to my platform. He's like, "Come follow me."
Follow me.
You fucking
He's probably like, this idiot.
You Western idiot. And yeah, man, that was just it was so kind. But also, I guess even things that we're talking about sort of deep things that I guess about us feeling at home and feeling connected to a group, but even culture shock in terms of like going out to eat. So when you're over there and you're at ramen noodle bars, it's perfectly acceptable. It's actually common to be able to slurp the noodles while you're eating. Whereas here, if you're eating like a dog, someone's like, mate, what are you doing? It's actually considered rude if you don't slurp your noodles. So I was sitting there eating the ramen noodles, like, just fucking eating that shit. And
So
he
he's
was
just
like,
enjoying his meal.
and the chef is like, yeah, man, this guy's obviously enjoying my food.
Yeah,
So it's
true.
a bit of a nod of approval, I guess. But yeah, man, some funny stories there.
Yeah, 100%. And in different cultures, different places to be accepted. But I think like in terms of your social networks as well, and it obviously has changed, not only doing face-to-face with culture and connection, but also on social media as well, like Facebook groups, which people can be a part of. And I think when you go into a group, you have to involve yourself. You have to actively want to go and say hello to people and want to introduce yourself and want to actually be active within that community, especially if it's something that's right for you, because I think people can be very timid and still just stand back and not want to engage. And then going back to the social networks like Facebook and groups like that, sort of just being that fly on the wall where you don't actually engage, right? And then you can start to feel, if you don't engage, whether it's face-to-face or on social media, that you are being isolated. But sometimes you can tend to isolate yourself as well.
That's right.
So, and there's people out there that are introverts, right? They're not big talkers, or, it doesn't mean that they can't be a part of community and give to the community. But I do think that making sure that, when you do go into a community or thrust yourself into something, you got to take the time to actually foster those relationships within that, whatever you're extrovert or introvert, whatever it may be. So yeah, make sure you definitely do that. And it's very important if you're in that group, it's great to be accepted, but it's as important to be accepting if you're the one that's in that group.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I agree.
Agreed.
Completely agree.
Nice, gents. Where are we at? We're at 59 minutes. That's probably all we have time for today.
Yeah.
Good chat. We're interested and keen to hear everyone's questions and thoughts on the topic. Any contributions are more than welcome from all five of you, as we always say.
And what do you think about community and connection and culture within your own space as well?
Yeah.
And how have you found it?
Awesome.
Yeah, Matty?
Love that. No, great raps. If you have any questions, as always, DMs are always open. Please, Jamie, we had a few others sharing their, I guess, testimonies and input about last week's topic. Stay tuned. Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining in for another week.
Next week is what?
Next week, Fear and Failure.
Fear and failure.
So,
oh, that'll be a good one.
Yeah.
Great. And number 4.
Number 4.
There we go.
Clapping buttons.
Awesome.
All right.
Let's go.
Let's roll.